Welcome back to another episode of Growing with My Fellow Growers. This is Jack Greenstock. I'm going to be your host this evening yet again. I'm joined by a panel of amazing growers and IPM specialists who I will introduce first. Matthew Gates, how you doing tonight?
Just the one IPM specialist here. Just kidding. I'm Matthew Gates, IPM specialist. If you need help or you'd like me to help you out with some pest issues, you can find a bunch of free content on my YouTube channel, Zenthanol, as well as on my Instagram, Sync Angel, and on Twitter as well. And I just published the FAQ video for September, unfortunately in mid-October, and hopefully I'll be able to get some for October as well. But if not, we'll just skip it and go to November. And if you've got questions in the chat, send them to me.
Good stuff. We always appreciate you giving us all those great answers to those questions. A lot of the people in the community ask those questions frequently, but it's good to have a monthly checkup and see what's most on people's mind. So thank you, Matthew, for always putting out great content. And I do say the one IPM specialist because more of the rest of us are specializing in other things, I guess. And that's, I would say, more so your career path there. So next up, we have
poking fun.
We have a commercial grower and a home grower with us, Spartan Grown.
Everybody, I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown. And yeah, I grow commercially, synthetically in cocoa, and at home here in Michigan, I grow my 12 rec plants here. And that's all from the heart and in organics, no synthetics.
Good stuff. Next up, we have Kyle, Predicative Breeding.
Hey everybody, glad to be here. If anybody's looking for good feminized seeds, feel free to check out my website at pbreeding.com. And if you want to look at any of my content, I'm on all social media platforms at Predicative Breeding. And I'm excited to be here. Jack, thanks for hosting.
Always happy to fill in as the host, or I guess I've been the host, declared the host for now, the time being. So I'll accept the role graciously as I can. Next up, we have the American one.
Hello, Jack, Paddle, and everyone in chat. I'm the American One on YouTube and the American One _ Keens on IG. Just search for the American One and look for the top hat. That would probably be me. I'm glad to be here. I'm excited for tonight's show.
We're glad to have you back, even if the people can't see you without the box. So I can see you here in the Zoom and hear your input. So thanks for joining us again, the American One. Last but certainly not least, Dr. MJ.
Hey, yeah, Dr. MJ Coco from cocoforcannabis.com. We publish articles, tutorials, and guides on the science and practice of growing cannabis. I put out a new video today, just premiered the video test report on the Mars Hydro FC3000. Go check that out. I'd like to give a shout out to all the growers growing along with me in the Plant Training Grow Challenge. Plants are coming along pretty well. And tell everybody to sign up for the New Year's Grow Challenge. I am going to have to cut out of here pretty early today. I'm just behind with like everything, including my sort of university work. So I'm going to have to leave early, but I'll be here for the first hour or so.
We appreciate you giving any time to us. It's always a great benefit to not just the panel, but also the members of the community. So thank you again for joining us. We have a final person who just joined in at the nick of time, but I always appreciate him. He doesn't have a box, but he's in the Zoom with us tonight. We have Noah the Grower.
Yeah, how's it going, everybody? I've been recovering from ankle surgery here, but happy to be back on and ready to talk with you guys.
We're happy to have you back, and I hope that the recovery is going smoothly and continues to be hopefully quick and full. I know it's never easy to get surgery, so I'm just hoping that you can manage that pain and get through it quickly and effectively there. So the American One, you had a topic that you wanted to discuss this evening that you sent to the panel, so I'll just pass it over to you so I don't mischaracterize your words.
Okay, yeah, it's not very difficult. I was just thinking we could discuss recent changes we made in our gardens, or maybe not so recent, that affected the outcome for either the better or the worse, and were the changes that you put in had the outcome you expected. Because, okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's a great topic. I just didn't want to steal credit for the topic as well, so I wanted you to be able to introduce it at the top of the show so people knew that Tao had a good suggestion for the show this evening, and we all definitely contribute, and Spartan Grown, it looks like you got a beautiful bowl packed up over there. Matthew was saying there's some nice bracts. Some people call them calyxes, but looks like a beautiful
those
bowl.
people are wrong. They're bracts.
Yeah, that's
But
bracts. Not ground up, though.
that's actually a recent thing. That kind of ties in. It's a recent thing I started doing. I used to, I call it bucking the buds. So when I hang dry, once they're dry and ready to trim, I whole plant hang. So when you are taking, when I trim, I see some people take a stick and they hold the stick and they trim the buds on the stick. I don't do that. I take the buds all off the sticks, put them in my trim bin, and then trim them singly. But when you do that, when you're removing those buds, I call it bucking the buds off. The bracts are usually left behind on the stems, and those stems, I cut them up and use them as mulch layer. And instead of losing those bracts that are just coated in trikes, I was like, fuck it, and started harvesting, I guess, all these little bracts off the stem. It only takes a minute every time. And just throw them on my trim tray or on my rolling tray, and then I just smoke bowls of pure bracts.
I feel like this is the cannabis farmer equivalent of like having a cow, milking the cow, and being able to take the skim off the top, or like whatever you want before you
cream.
Yeah, the cream.
Yeah, I've done that for a while. I think you can get a fairly good sample of what the harvest is going to taste like right after the dry by smoking those. They are bracts, but I think that the semantic distinction there from calyxes is probably overblown. But yeah, smoking those single ones, I think that they sort of there's less chlorophyll. There's less sort of, they cure up faster. They have a better taste to them earlier.
I agree. Semantics is kind of it's being very semantical, but at the same time, even if I'm the only one, I want to drag this cannabis industry kicking and screaming into fucking legitimacy. You know what I'm saying? So that's what's behind that.
Yeah, that's fine.
that.
The pistols one is a little bit more annoying to me because they
or
actually
hairs
are
or
pistols.
hairs.
And when people are, when they try to correct that, but I agree.
What do they call it?
Stigmas. Stigmas are actually.
Stigmas are the top part of a pistol, though. I mean, it's
Well,
like
There's
listen,
a
while
pistol and there's a
part
bunch of
pistol.
stigmas.
It's not
While
incorrect
we're
to call
on
them
the
pistols.
nomenclature and whatnot,
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of things that should be addressed because I was actually going to bring this up when we got to that air. I was going to ask Sink Angel, why hasn't the plants that are dark hours sensitive been switched their name to the scotoperiod thing? And how come science in general hasn't addressed the Indica sativa or like the whole genus, or did they? And no one's just paying attention. And the third question.
What was that? No, wait, could you say the second question a little bit more?
Okay. Well, you know how there's a argument over the terms indica and sativa, whereas the old potheads just figure thin leaf, stay euphoric and not pass out is sativa, and indica is fat leaf, sit on the couch and enjoy yourself is indica, but that's not true. And then the other question is when these bugs and bacteria, whatever gets renamed, who is the governing body that determines the name changes and then institutes them, and then all of a sudden everyone accepts them? Because that's who we need to get involved with this cannabis industry, I believe.
Really great. Those are all three really great questions. Let me answer them in reverse order. So there's not one single global, although there might be some that kind of articulate themselves as that like organization that oversees the like botanical nomenclature, for example. And the one that I typically use, let me make sure I say it right because they've recently shortened their acronym to the ICU, I believe, but it's the International, what was it called? Botanical or International Nomenclature. Let me see if that's enough for the keywords. International Code of Nomenclature for Algae, Fungi, and Plants. So that's the one that I like to use. It's a laborious and tedious, process. It's kind of like studying law in a lot of ways, I would say. Kind of like you have to be really dedicated to this very sort of didactic and sort of verbose. So there's a lot of like really passionate conversations about like whether, for example, you want to characterize things by phylogeny or not, or should we get rid of patrilineal names, or in other words, names where like the species epithet or the genera or whatever is like named after a person.
Yes.
Or things like that. Yeah, I actually am of this opinion as well. I feel like personally, I think names, I'm okay with names that don't do this, but personally, I feel like names should describe the thing in some unique
Like,
way.
for instance, the Swerkowski. Now I'm saying it wrong.
Swirsky.
Yeah, was a guy named Swirsky, right?
Yeah,
That's
it's named
correct.
after him.
Okay.
It's named after him. That's
Right.
right. And he contributed a lot to echology, and anyone who has used the Swirsky should really look up Mr. Swirsky. Let me get his first name so I have it for us here.
I have a naming convention one that makes sense. I just had finger limes for the first time. They're also called Citrus australiaceae, I believe. I'm probably mispronouncing the second word, but they're the little limes that are like shaped literally like your finger, and you squeeze them out and it looks like salmon roe or like little eggs or something. But they're like tiny little beads of citrus, and it's one of the more unique citrus that I've ever had. They're from Australia though, so it makes sense that they called it Citrus australia, whatever it is. Because
What does that
it's
taste
from-
like? Like a lime?
It tastes just like a lime. It doesn't smell like a lime, but it tastes like a lime. They have like white ones, they have pink and like yellow on the inside, but
That's cool.
very interesting fruit. What was the first name of Mr. Swirsky, Matthew? If you found it.
I was actually still looking for it. I
No
used
worries.
to know off the top of my head, but that has gone away.
There's something with the naming convention there though, like Swirsky I versus Swirsky E, and then that E at the ending
That's
usually indicates
that's
it's
a
named
Latin-
after a
Yeah,
person.
that's just
That's the Latin
Latinization.
pronunciation difference. Honestly, only persnickety pedantic people like me are going to like choose one over another and have a preference. And you're not wrong. It's a dead language. Okay, let me ask you this question. And Dr. MJ, back me up if this is not the case, or if this is the case, but isn't the psi in science Greek? So it should be science.
I imagine it is Greek. Yeah. Most of those words like that came in from Greek.
Yeah.
But what it's supposed to be, I would push back on that. As a linguist, it is supposed to be the way the community of speakers pronounce it. And efforts to try to hold language to some arbitrary norm backfire tremendously. In fact, in English, it's the effort to hold English to an arbitrary spelling norm, which is why English now is so impossibly difficult to spell. If you go to a language like Spanish that updates the way they spell the language to the way they speak, it's like easy for anybody to spell Spanish words. So I think that this is a fascinating conversation, and I'll get way too deep on the linguistic side of it. So maybe I should mute again.
Tal, what other questions did you have that you didn't get answered? Because
What
I
were
know
those
you
other
answered
questions?
reverse order, at least the first
Right,
one.
but it is important that we all, when we say something, we're all thinking of the same thing, or that's a very important
Yes,
thing. But
that's it, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't have a problem with when we're talking about cannabis to call them pistols, because we're
Right.
talking about
People
the same
know.
thing.
Everybody
has
will
a
know what you
100%
mean, even though it's
communication value.
incorrect. Right. The other
And when I say
like-
FSO, I almost always, when I say FSO, I have to say RSO, just to get that understanding.
everybody understands, right?
FSO is
Yeah.
trademarked. I just found that out because I use FSO from Cream of the Crop. It's actually trademarked by them, so that's like a company
Really?
thing.
Yeah, we're talking about jargon here, and jargon varies from often from like the technical definitions of terms. They're words
Yeah.
used by communities to have precise meanings, to make communication within the community economical and really clear. And I think
Just-
that sometimes we can sort of lose sight of what we're using the language for.
Just
I
think
have-
about how many different terms for cannabis there is: cannabis, marijuana, pot, weed. So
And the
many
slang,
names. Yeah. All right.
I have a
that
thing,
You
might-
though-
didn't say ganja. Come on, you have to say
Right,
ganja.
yeah, you're right.
Ganja's one of the most famous, but one I posted about recently on my story is that I see so often in the cannabis community, even by respected breeders, they use the word or the letter X and say times. They'd say like purple Urkel times cheesequake instead of saying cross. X stands for cross. Like if you see cross country on a t-shirt, it says XC. If you see a railroad crossing, there's an R and an R with a big X through it, which means cross.
Yeah,
So,
but it also means times in different contexts. But I agree.
in
That's
math,
misleading.
not in breeding though. And
Right.
it's absolutely improper. And I think, as Spartan mentioned, if we want to look like we actually know what we're talking about in this certain situation, I think it's at least people should know, because a lot of people say it. It's like
Yeah,
when they say
well-
trichromes with a like
Yeah,
R.
that is annoys me to no end. But
It's
if
just
you talk
improper.
over everybody's head, though, that's not effective either. Which I talk down so people can understand what I'm saying.
I think you got to sort of meet them where they're at sometimes. If they
It's
don't understand, they could ask the question.
Eliahu. It's Eliahu. Eliahu Swirsky. I actually didn't search this. It just finally came to me.
That is quite the interesting name. I could see why you forgot, because it's not your everyday. It's not like Matthew or something like that. More common.
Well, he comes from a different culture, Jack. Speaking of nomenclature.
There you go. I mean, I'm not surprised that he
Yeah.
isn't an American, perhaps, but
Okay, now
Whatever that
backing up to the middle question was the scotoperiod question. It's because when I learned about that, then it's obvious that it's really not a photoperiod, it's a scotoperiod. If that's the way you pronounce it, I could be pronouncing it wrong too. So,
You're saying it right. You're saying it right.
so
Scoto-
why haven't they designated it like that in all or whatever short day length plants that there are that are scotoperiods? Why haven't they more changed that in the nomenclature of everything?
I imagine that's very much for the reason why Dr. MJ Coco says. I also think that it's more so you get into a situation sometimes where it's more common for certain groups of scientists or certain groups of people just in general to adopt one particular linguistic characterization over another one. And in a way, it's kind of like what we were just saying about nomenclature, because since the presence or absence of light is binary, you're kind of still sort of talking about the same thing by talking about its opposite.
Right, but the difference. Hold on. Time out.
Here's the thing.
Time out. Yeah.
But here's the thing. I think it's
Okay.
important to use the right word for the job.
Right. So listen.
I think this is one where I
Hold
agree
on.
that the difference is semantically.
It's not
important.
semantics, because listen to me.
Hold on.
When you have a
Semantics
cannabis
meaningful.
plant, listen. When you have a cannabis plant,
Yeah.
you could put it. You could put it in 6 hours of dark, or you could put it in 6 hours of darkness, 1 hour of light, 6 hours of darkness, and then 12 hours or 11 hours of light, and it'll stay in veg because there is no 12 hours of darkness.
Yes.
It has to be darkness. It's not.
Yes, the darkness is what's important. I'm not pushing back against that.
But
point.
that's the difference of a photoperiod and a real scotoperiod in my mind, because that is relatively the answer. I mean, the definitions, right?
Yeah. So what I was trying to say is that I think this is one of those cases where the semantic distinction is important, and we really should be referring to them as scotoperiod. Because that actually communicates a really important information about the way the plant grows. As you're saying, it's really the uninterrupted dark period, which is what's required for the plant to enter its flowering and maintain its flowering cycle. It really has nothing to do with what happens during the light cycle. So
yeah,
I think that that's a case different from the calyx-bracts distinction, where I don't think it makes a meaningful difference. Whether we call them calyxes or bracts, I don't think it communicates a different message about anything. But calling it photoperiod or scotoperiod, I would agree. I think we should call it scotoperiod, and I think that communicates something more than calling it photoperiod.
I also think we should use scotoperiod and spell it with a K, but that's again one of those sort of just being beholden to the etymology of a word. But basically, English is an officialized Creole, as far as I'm concerned. If we're really talking about linguistics, but yes, exactly. So by saying scotoperiod, you kind of obliterate some mysticism about what exactly you're referring to about the sensitivity of the plant, like what Dr. MJ Coco is saying. And I think that's why it's so important to say scotoperiod over photoperiod. With regards to bract versus calyx versus, inflorescence versus some of these contain the others depending on the context and that sort of a thing. But from a botanical perspective, the reason why it might be helpful to use one word over another, but I don't think there's any standardization still, is that not just in cannabis, but other plants, is that, maybe the word becomes married to the like developmental biology or physiology of the plant. And so like maybe this tissue from these genes produces this structure, therefore it is a bract, therefore it is whatever. And so in those contexts, I do think that can be useful. But again,
that's
this is
the jargon community though, right? Who's doing that kind of work? I mean, if you're doing like, anatomy research on floral anatomy, then I totally think you need to be, but I also think that there's a lot of gray area. I mean, in the one sort of area of biological anatomy, flowers is like the grayest of what is a calyx and what's a bract. I mean,
right. Should we be calling them racemes, and seeds should be achenes?
I agree with the achenes on the seeds.
I don't know.
About the other one.
Well, again, very much like the scotoperiod comment, I think terminology like akene is, valid and important. Also, cannabis produces a fruit, as far as we're, as long as we're super technical there, right? And that's useful to know, right? Because from a taxonomic perspective, from a phylogenetic perspective, those words have meaning that is useful. But again, in a sort of specialized context. As long as, so I like Wittgenstein. I love the philosopher Wittgenstein. He's my favorite. And one of the things he talks a lot about is language and sort of philosophy of the mind and that sort of a thing. And you should check him out if you've never checked him out before. But he laments that, it's impossible to have 100% communication. And I kind of agree with that for this reason. He famously, I think, wrote that if a lion were to speak, we would not understand them. And it's true. Like I get the point he's trying to make.
And good communication isn't just about saying your point well. It's also about understanding how your point is going to be interpreted by your audience.
Absolutely, exactly. You have to. Communication is for talking to other people. It's not about like you say, being right necessarily or wrong or whatever. If I say the thing and if I communicate the concept in my mind so that it's transmitted to the other thing that I'm talking to.
Yes.
Well, then that's the thing that needs to happen ultimately.
Yeah, there's several transformations. It's got to get from your mind into words, from your words into the other person's words, and then from their words into their mind. It's kind of a fascinating process.
Yeah, right?
So I'll say happy 420 to the West Coast. Out here in California, we just passed 420. For anybody out there token up.
Just got to jump in really quick. I got to rewind. Yeah. What the fuck is the fruit of the cannabis plant?
It's what the seed is contained in.
So they consider so it has to be a seeded plant to be able to have fruit.
Yeah, seeds define fruit.
Many pollinated plants
cannabis,
are that way.
It's just that seed casing, right? That just the thin little shell.
That little skin on the outside of the
fruit. Yep. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Never mind. I thought it was going to be.
Tomatoes are fruits too.
You can eat it. Cannabis is a edible crop for sure, and there's lots of ways from to consume it as a food.
Well, fruits don't necessarily mean edible.
That's true. No, I'm just saying.
I'm just happy that you didn't say that the buds were the fruit.
I know, right?
Yeah, I was like, okay,
fruits of our labor, maybe.
I want to continue to call it a flower because I love it, and I love calling myself a florist. So as long as I can still be correct with that, I'm good.
Well, flowers.
You're good. You're a florist.
There.
Inflorescence is also a cool word, which anything from like the fucking stem up is like considered an inflorescence on a flower. You can't really go wrong with that, from what I understand.
But
now
what was the first question you had?
Yeah, now we're going to really go down the rabbit hole with the Indica and sativa thing. Did the scientists, does any governing bodies want to tackle that and create?
We've done genetic studies that really show that there isn't the bifurcation, at least in the strains that we're dealing with. I mean, there's two different ancestral populations, I think, but we're not separating them out in the way that we deal with the strains.
Well, and sativa just means cultivated. In every single crop, if you look up garlic sativum or sativum, all those mean cultivated. It is cultivated by humans. So cannabis sativa means we're cultivating it.
Yes, that's true. It's a species epithet. But like here, so I mean, the answer to that question like a lot of questions is complex, and like the other two questions we just entered is complex. Like, yes, eventually there will probably be more of a nomenclatural standardization by various organizations, and people will either get with it or they won't. This also happens, by the way, in biocontrol agents, where like it used to be a theta, but now it's Delosia coriaria, which is the rove beetle that people use and get applied, and so the name
Hypoapsis
changes.
miles.
Or yeah, the waste bin taxon, which what I mean by that is that sometimes organisms, especially small mites, are basically indistinguishable. And even if you were to plate it out, put it under a microscope and count a little CD or take out the genitalia to tell the difference, which is what you sometimes have to do, you still might come up because there's cryptic species, and even the concept of a species is a little bit contentious when you really get down into it and try to look up the words ring species, for example, if you want to really take a look at a sort of basic example of where things that live in a population might be able to intermingle reproductively with things near them, but not with the ones that reproduce with a different group that's a little bit further away and another one. And so you get this sort of like ring species situation, and there's various ways.
This is a problem. This is one of the problems, Matt, I think, with the way that our minds want to categorize things neatly into it's either A or it's B, or it's this thing or it's that thing. And reality is just a continuous change and variation. And we're always going to be sort of arbitrarily drawing boundaries between different categories and saying this is on one side and this is on the other.
It's definitely helpful when you can do it, but I think it's important to acknowledge when it's really kind of just an abstraction that helps you function. There's a research report by McPartland and Small that's called A Classification of Endangered High THC Cannabis Sativa Subspecies Indica, Domesticates and Their Wild Relatives. And in it, the two authors basically make the point, as I interpret the paper, maybe I'm totally wrong here, but that's not my understanding. I think it is the case that what they're alleging is that there are wild populations where we see a little bit more of a sort of population tendency. And in some other research that, like in the YouTube video I made about global IPM review for cannabis, I go over some of the fossilized research and the sort of expansion origin of cannabis as well. But I did take a look at this paper in order to kind of come to some other conclusions. And that's that although there might have been sort of a striation or sort of like a separation, a layered separation south to north, and maybe in other populations over time, nowadays, like that whole like thin leaf, broad leaf distinction, it's obliterated. They literally use the word in the abstract. I remember it because I was asked to take a look at something that cited it a little while ago. And yeah, they say in no uncertain terms that, or maybe it's not in the abstract, but it's in the paper where they say that like the differences are kind of obliterated. The differences in production level cannabis. And also just because there might've been a sort of leaf foliar morphological separation, that doesn't mean that there was a fidelity for various chemical agents being produced by the plant, secondary metabolites. There might have been a tendency to have a certain class of terpenes over another one. But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean that was the case in all of them. This is just one paper as well. So we can't really take it as like, we shouldn't take any scientific research as gospel like that. But
yeah, because I think there's a conflicting view with that. They say, I'll have to look it up, but they're saying there's subspecies Afghanica, subspecies, like they all have it.
Himalayensis, Asperima.
Chinensis. Yeah.
Chinensis. So, see, there you go. I called it Chinensis, but I know it's China. See, there's another little linguistic quirk there.
Right. So basically, when people are talking about it, nobody's on the same page, really. That's bad.
They're all fucking hybrids, man. I hate to say it. They're all hybrids at this point, and not truly. There are still some like landrace or heirloom stuff that's going to be really narrow leaf or really broad leaf. But I think call it what you want, because science isn't going to get on the page.
But when somebody says they want something mostly sativa, That means
Ask
nothing.
them what they mean.
It's
Ask them
more
if they mean
important to ask-
uplifting.
That means
which
nothing,
they usually
right.
mean uplifting.
Yes,
is
it's more,
usually what 90% of people mean.
well, and then
Yeah,
here's the rub, right? It doesn't even matter anything that you just said, because regardless of whether or not the plant is like consistent in its morphology or its chemical profile or whatever, that
affects
doesn't
people
guarantee
different.
that, yes, that doesn't guarantee that the pharmacodynamics inside your own body are going to be the same. So really,
It means
Yeah.
nothing.
well,
Sad.
it means
No, I'm
something.
joking.
It means something, but
It means something. It's just not connected to the
Yeah.
genetics of the plant, I think.
or at the very least, it can't be totally 100% predictive at the very least. And maybe
Well, I
it's
think-
very,
Yeah, I think we sort of use these terms though with the community to refer to either the way the plant grows. So growers usually talk about their plant like looking like a sativa or acting like a sativa, or the way that it affects you. So if it's like an uplifting, more of an energetic sort of effect, then people would refer to them. I think that's where you sort of started on this.
Well, some people will get down from the one that you get an uplifted effect from. That's
I
part of it.
agree, but
Yeah.
I think that there is some. I mean, I think to the extent that the names mean something, it's more to do with one of those two dimensions than anything to
Context.
do with the genetic history of the plant.
but we
I
were
think-
talking about it mostly, I think, in that context exactly. That people,
Yeah, and
will use
in
it
that
to mean
extent,
that
it
way.
actually is communicative, right? Because if somebody says, "Oh, this is a
Yes.
sativa because of the way it grows," that tells me something as a fellow grower about I got to grow it or whether I want to smoke it or whatever.
It'll stretch a lot and have
Yeah.
narrow leaves, is
Or
what we
if
would
it's-
expect
Yeah.
or guess.
19 week to get
But-
done, would I consider a sativa, right?
Yeah, it takes longer to grow too. Exactly, it takes longer to mature. But I think we have to caution against thinking that all sativa strains like that, or there's any genetic connection really between them. It's much more of a descriptive term about how the plant grows or about how the plant affects us. I mean, at least that's how it's used in our community.
That's
Yeah, it's funny.
perfectly.
When you have one shatter your expectation, like Platinum Yeti F3 for me, it was the stretchiest, most narrow leaf plant I've ever grown, and it was the most narcotic sedating high I've ever had. So once you get that to happen to you, I think a lot of people will stop like harping so much on the indica sativa paradigm. Although I do think it's a good reference point because we all have this history behind us of like, we called it indica sativa for so long, indica sativa hybrid, like the dispensaries or provisioning centers or wherever, they've had to label it for patients. And like, let's say green crack, cultivar I don't like the name of, it's actually called Kush originally, but green crack is what it's known by because it has effects like crack. Snoop Dogg renamed it because it got people so energetic, it was like they were smoking crack. Now, maybe if you gave it to 100 people, 95 of them are going to get uplifted and 5 of them will be knocked out and put to sleep. And that could be a tolerance thing. That could be the grower took it too long. But like, let's say you had the same exact batch of green crack and you gave it to 100 people and in the 90s of percent get uplifted. Then could you say, okay, that's like generally going to be a sativa effect for people are going to be uplifting. And I think more informative would be to terpene test for minor cannabinoids and flavonoids and other things like that. And then give what I would consider a medical patient the feedback, because then you could say, oh, I like limonene, I like myrcene, I like a little bit of this and a little bit of that, because that strain that I tried with it has all those things, and its THC level is about 18% or 30% or 21% or whatever it is. So if you have testing, you at least have a baseline of knowing what you like.
Sure.
Hopefully we're moving in that
Originally-
direction, right? And away from just simple labels like sativa, indica, hybrid. I mean, hopefully
Right.
we'll get more of that kind of approach to it. I agree, Jack.
Yeah, but like
That's the goal.
but those words kind of, and there's no reason that words can't evolve out of their original context when I say this, but the contention point that I find kind of important will be because sativa and indica were not maybe originally, but are so often used in taxonomic nomenclature specifically, that I wonder if it's better to standardize that and then use, or maybe facilitate, who knows, it's an organic process, but other words to describe the things that we're trying to say, because especially when breeding becomes more larger and we have more research into it and we have various subspecies, and maybe that research changes things. Like I've gotten into conversations with people about this again with biocontrols, where it's like, man, why do they have to change the names? Well, because it means something, and if we're trying to associate, for example, like let's say, for example, we go into appellations, okay, and somebody wants to breed something from a certain place, or they want to like take trying to source wild populations that are going to be doing good in the group in the ecosystems that they want. Well, if a certain subspecies is in a certain place or does well in a certain way, I don't know, like that research, I think those words should mean something there. And I guess it'd be interesting to see how that develops over time.
So I wanted to go back all the way to Tao's original question. I had one other point on that, but I think we've hit this topic for quite long enough for this episode. But the American one, your initial thought was talking about something that we've changed in our growing. This is growing with my fellow growers, so I know there's a lot of growers listening that would like to hear that. And first, I want to pass it over to Noah the grower. You've been quiet. If you didn't hear it earlier, the American one said, "What is one thing that you've changed in your garden? And did it have a positive effect like you had hoped, or if it had a negative effect, like something that you can think of, ideally something positive that you changed in your garden recently or not recently?"
Yeah, I'm constantly changing little things. I grow under 1,000-watt HID, hyper sodium hoods, and I try and change like the size of what my canopy my plants are going to be underneath it. Sometimes I'll do like 3 or 4 5-gallon buckets. Sometimes I'll do 2 7s, and I'm constantly just trying to battle even that with my dehumidifier and the air conditioner, the environment, and bringing it in. And I'm constantly trying to change different strains. And you called it. I tried that. I guess it would be a great thing. Went to that LA Kush cake. I wasn't too impressed. And sometimes, my grandpa used to say, you got to keep it simple, stupid. But I mean, I'm always trying to listen to you guys and get better little quirks and stuff. But sometimes you kind of got to remember who brought you to the dance too, so I'd cautious change too much, but you do have to be changing with the times. It's kind of a fine line.
Definitely. I think for you, if you've been doing it for a long time, so you have a system that you've dialed in. You didn't just come up with your system in your first grow and stick with it. You've changed a bunch of stuff to get to where you are today. So you're
Absolutely
less susceptible to opening yourself up to somebody else's outside feedback, because you've already got a really good system that works really well for you. To adopt somebody else's system is going to be really hard. There's going to be tons and tons of change, I would imagine. So I'm glad that you have one. I was just listening to Future Cannabis Project today with the Cannabis Brothers. They've been doing it since 1993. And they were talking about some of the changes that they've made throughout their time. But once they came to the traditional or into the legal market here in California, they had to do things that make their input cost a little bit higher, but it's just how they've done it. And it provides them the best flavor. And I've actually tried their product in the legal market here. And I can say, they have one, unique cultivars, which is a big difference from a lot of the people out here. But 2, they cultivate it well and it tastes good, where a lot of stuff looks good, but it doesn't taste good. So shout out to the Cannabis Brothers. They were on Future Cannabis Project earlier. And if you have a good recipe that works for you, then it's definitely nice to just, go with what works, right? And you can always try little stuff here and there, but knowing that base that works really well for you is
for sure. And I will say something on that. I think that taste is sometimes quite underrated. Obviously experienced growers like you guys know how important that is, but everybody wants it to look perfect. Everybody wants it to, do this and that, whereas taste is, where it's at for me and most guys that I know. So that's definitely staying true to what's going to get you the best tasting pot, to me, is really what's it's all about.
Yeah. And for me,
100% agree with that.
Taste to the last hit on the joint, last hit of the bowl. Like where some people I see ash it out before they hit the greens hits, the first few hits of the bowl, but they don't actually kill it down to the very last puff. On my joints, I like to smoke it down. I have a glass tip for my joints, so I smoke it literally to the very, very last puff. And one of the ones I grew recently, the 3-Point Stance, had that flavor. Like the last puff actually tasted like maybe even tastier than the first puff, which I was like blown away by. I was like, damn, this is some really good flavor. So it matters a lot for me. And I think it actually impacts the experience of the high a lot of the times. Like the flavonoids and the terpenes are part of that entourage effect, and they have their own unique effects along with the THC and other cannabinoids that make for such a fun experience with the cannabis sometimes. Kyle Breeder, I know you have also been very quiet over there. Have you changed anything recently and had good results? And would you like to share?
Yeah. I'm kind of like no, I'm always kind of changing things and trying to improve on certain things. But so that air filter that I bought, basically to dock the outside air, and I mean, I've seen a radical change in my plants. behaviors and growth. And then I just recently, I've been having some issues after I moved with growing. And so what I did is I went down to the local grow store down here near Worcester, Massachusetts, and I bought an RO filter, like a whole setup. And man, the plants are loving it. I mean, even just by giving it like that kind of water has just been like a radical change. So yeah, those are two of the things that I think are definitely helpful, and I've seen a change with.
That can make a huge difference if you don't have a great water source, especially running like hydro or any sort of nutrients. Even in soil, though, having good water source, whether it's RO or something else that's filtered that works well with your plants, is a big deal. Spartan Grown, you've also been quiet over there. I know you've got some new lights and some awesome new stuff going on, but is there anything new that you've done recently? Any changes that you've made that have had a positive impact that you could think of? Or even if it's not recently, is there something that you changed in your process, and when you did it, you're like, damn, everything sort of snapped into place and that you saw a big improvement on?
Yeah, it'd be more the latter, and because really I do things, I do things by, and this is gonna sound weird, but I do things different almost every time. I'm not one to do things exactly the same every time. I try to read the plants and try to tailor my care to that. That being said, one of the things that I changed was my growing technique, and that's when I switched to my sub-irrigated planters. And that took away guesswork when it comes to frequency of watering or volume of watering. It just took all that away. And I was able to focus a lot of my attention on other things, which improved the grow. You know, it's almost as if it's not quite as easy as automated. Like if it was automated, that would free up even more of my time so that I could do more things in the grow. So I think just that in general, if you can, either through automation or whatever, if you can find a way to free up tasks that you're doing so that you can do different tasks in the garden and really pay attention to your plants. I think that and COVID forcing me to stay home more, you know, it just keeps me more in the garden, and the more you're in the garden, the more you're going to you know, improve that garden. Usually
Notice anything going wrong too, you can spot it before it becomes a real problem and you know, nip it in the bud, so to speak. I think that what you said is very relevant though, about just like, you know, each time you grow, doing it a little bit differently. Like I just got some of Brandon's bokashi, and I think there's like a certain cup per gallon to use, but I was like, am I going to go dig a cup thing out of my, you know, kitchen, or am I just going to stick my hand into this fucking bag and top dress the pot? And so I was like, all right, here's how many handfuls covered the first pot, so I'll use that same amount of handfuls on the second pot and the third pot roughly and go from there. So
Growers make it work with what they got on hand, literally.
yeah,
it's kind of like baking in that regard. Like I know my grandparents were some of like the best bakers I've ever come across, and if I asked them the recipe, they could never, even like to get it written down, I'd like sit there and, you know, write some of the stuff down, but they'd be like a pinch of this, handful of that, spoonful of that, whatever, and it always came out amazing. And a lot of people have to follow a recipe exactly perfectly on paper every time, but some people can sort of go by feel. And in baking, it's less common, but you do see it happen. Dr. MJ, you are up next, buddy. Have you done anything recently? Any changes in the garden that have had significant improvements? And if not recently, something?
Yeah, I mean, this whole run has been a big change for me. I went, you know, I cut my tent in half. I went down from a 4x4 into only a 4x2. Had the SP3000 in there, and I've got only 2 plants. Well, I have 3 plants. I have my little party cups. So that's another thing. So a big downsize, and it's been interesting to downsize and to sort of stay squeezed in. My little 2x4 tent is like completely full of plant at this point, and I really hope that my plants decide that they're completely done growing very soon. I had to zip tie the light to the cross beam on the top of the tent last night, and do a bunch of super cropping and stuff. But it's been fun growing in the little 4x2 tent. I really enjoyed it. I think that it's a whole hell of a lot easier than managing the back plants in the 4x4 tent. It is less space though than it seems like. So that's a little bit fun. And the other big thing I've been doing differently is we're doing this party cup challenge, right? So I have a plant that is now, you know, stretching, hopefully towards the end of the stretch, in 18-ounce party cup. Roots are literally bursting out of all of the little holes that I cut in the party cup. I'm a little bit worried because I cut a lot of slits in sort of the side of the cup for air. that it may eventually sort of rip the entire, sort of do an Incredible Hulk impersonation and rip itself out of its party cup. And I had to set that up on a special drip system. So I got my party cup plant getting watered 9 times per day, just really small little bursts of water 9 times a day to keep it well fertigated. It was growing very well until a couple of days ago, and I did a res cleanup, and I forgot to turn the pump back on after that, and they went like, I don't know exactly how long, but longer than 24 hours without water. And that was not a very happy 24 hours for the party cup plant in particular, but recovered. Although I think it's going to hurt a little bit from that episode throughout. It's just because it's in a party cup, it can't really have much space.
Especially after getting water 9 times a day, to have none for 24 hours, it was just like brutal for that thing, because it was so, used to getting that 9 a day.
It was used to getting its little hit, man, and it didn't really need anything, and it sucked itself dry. The party cup was like dry. And so I went in there and I kind of talked gently to it and told it I was sorry and watered it for like an hour, just like in little doses, trying to rehydrate the media. Explained my apologies. But
even with automated watering systems like Spartan was talking about earlier, you could still have issues like that if we forget to turn on a pump or fill the res and things like that. So
that's
it's
my
something
problem,
to think
man.
about.
It's one of these things, when I used to work in restaurants back when I was an undergrad, we used to always joke that you get much better service when it's busy and when you got a ton of things to do. When you get things really set up, automated, sometimes you can get a little bit complacent about certain sides of it. And like, I just wasn't paying enough attention to my pump that day. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't have forgotten to water them altogether, but I just assumed I didn't have to worry about it. So there is, you need to stay vigilant.
One of the things Spartan talked about that I forgot to mention after he had given his bit about what improved was with his like the auto pot watering system. As somebody who hand waters, and I'm also growing in a similar soil, I've had times where I either overslept, forgot about getting to the plants, or got home from work late or something like that, and the plant didn't get water right when it would have wanted it. Where in a SIP system, I wouldn't have had that happen, and I would have maybe increased my yield, is probably the most likely case. So
and
I think
you can set up watering to be at the time that it's best for the plant instead of at the time that it's best for your schedule or your work or whatever else it is. And I mean, I'm sorry, but I can set a timer to do 9 events per day, but I cannot myself do 9 events per day.
No. But like I like his system where it takes it when it wants it, and then when it dries out, he even lets it go for a little bit. Because even when the bottom of the reservoir is empty, the soil holds a good amount of moisture for a fair amount of time. So it's definitely an interesting system, and I've considered going towards that style. A lot of people call it like the frugal forest build now, the SIPs, or the just even having like rocks or hydroton underneath your pots and having some sort of container around the outside of the pot so that it can wick up the sides. And definitely don't think it's going to be very difficult for me to pull off, because basically I just have my stuff on a drain tray right now and it goes right through. And I could just basically fill the bottom with rocks and let the water basically stack up, or take the drain tray out and just put rocks in there in general.
But I mean, that's something
sorry,
we'll have to do. I'm just saying that's something for water only systems. I just want to make that clear, because you get a real big salt buildup if you're trying to feed nutrient through that.
That's great clarification.
Thank you, Spartan. I felt like I should just let that point go, because I feel like I make that point a lot, but
it's good to say it every time. It doesn't take that long. But the American one, you brought this topic up, so I imagine maybe you did some change recently that either worked well, thought it was going to work well, and it blew up in your face. So what do you think? What happened?
No, I'm just all excited about these minor changes that I made that I know are going to improve my situation. So as many of you may know, I've been reusing soil, and I've seen the dramatic deterrent. What do you call it? No, I just lost the word. But a dramatic decrease in the aeration of my soil, and
It's compacting.
yeah. So instead of continuing to add perlite, but let me back up a little bit. So I've been starting all my clones in ProMix. I like ProMix. It's clean. Well, it was clean. Like now I'm second guessing almost everything, but let's assume that the ProMix is clean. I have success of making, doing my cuts, my clones with
Don't assume that.
ProMix. So yeah, right. So but that has perlite in it. Then I was the original super soil I made had perlite in it, and over time, since I have been reusing it, it's all been slowly, getting smaller and smaller, the perlite, and losing that aeration. So I recently bought 2 bags of that pumice stone, and whoever talks about pumice, I'm
Brandon.
sitting here thinking it's going to be light. Like, it was heavy. Yeah, so I didn't realize that at first, but
Heavy as fuck. Eagle talks about
yeah,
that sometimes. It's super heavy. It's like a hard
it is
rock,
super
but
heavy.
Brandon
But
Rust
it's
uses it.
air. Yeah, it's air, and I believe in it, and it won't decay. That's the most important thing. So going forward, as I institute it every time when I go to reuse it, it'll still be there almost in its original form and doing its purpose. I also bought rice hulls, which this is all new to me. So the rice hulls I thought were going to be either bigger or stronger. It looks like they're just going to fade away in a heartbeat in my soil. And I don't know even understand how that's going to even give me aeration, but I trust what people have taught me or whatever. So I'm throwing that in there too. And if nothing else, there'll be silica added into my, mix. So I got all that. I'm excited about that. But even more so, this is a big change for me because I hate spraying anything on my plants other than water and maybe some microbes every now and then. But this is a microbe, and I got the Bavaria bassiana. So after I heard all the testimonials, and then I went back and watched the videos on Zentanol, which I saw the white flies die. I'm pretty sure I saw a spider mite infected with the fungal coming out of it. Is that correct?
I have a video for mycosis of spider mites for those who want to know, and on white fly.
Yeah. I watched them both.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm getting it. So I got the package and it has nothing about foliar spray directions whatsoever. So this is like a perfect example of how coming to these shows with, and getting information. So Sink Angel, if you could please patronize me and tell me how I should apply this, Barry. But yeah, you know what I'm talking about. As a foliar spray to be effective. Yeah, BB. And another question is there 2 different kinds of BB, a different strain? And yeah, what's the most effective way to use it, please? And thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll answer the second question first. There are multiple strains of Bavaria bassiana. There are, the one that I'm most familiar with personally with experience is GHA, which stands for Grasshopper Active, which I had to do a lot of patent digging to find out that was actually the name of the strain, or at least that's the origination for the strain name. Regardless, there are other, in research, I'll see that a lot of research on Bavaria bassiana will create strain names, just for the purposes of their research as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's also a production or a commercial strain or anything like this. Just for those who might look into Bavaria bassiana that way. Okay, so you said that you obtained some, but is it like a labeled product, or what did you obtain?
All right, it's from buildasoil.com, and basically it says Bavariana bassiana, and then on the back it actually has a strain. It says strain HF23 is a natural isolate and is not genetically modified, and the directions are just for soil to add it to the soil actually.
Okay, but
I bought the wrong thing.
No.
Don't tell me that.
No. Yeah, okay. I won't tell you that. It's not the case.
Okay. Good.
So does this have a name? Does the product have a name besides Bavaria bassiana HF23?
No, basically not. It has BB plus 4 ounces. So it's pretty nondescript label. Yes. It says carrier, graphite, talc, organic listed from Farm Talk Inc. And that's all basically what I just read to you is all the information it has on it.
Is it the water soluble or the BB plus from Build a Soil?
It says BB plus 4 ounces. So what are you telling me? It's not water soluble?
Well, it may be. It's just BB, and it's also other stuff. That's why there's a plus.
Okay.
The plus is going to have other benefits. And Build a Soil, for anybody who doesn't know, Jeremy does a lot of research in his sourcing and make sure that they only carry good material, so you're not going to accidentally buy the wrong or a bad thing for your garden.
But it could be the wrong application. You know what I mean?
I think
All right,
BB
so
is pretty universally used for the
right,
same thing.
it's going to be growing no matter what, and it's the same organism. So yeah,
Well, usually I would use some information from like a pesticide label to make that call.
oh,
Isn't there one
Know,
out there commercially available? It's like called something Roots from like Botanicare,
there's a few
something
no, there's a few different ones. Like there's Botanigard W22WP
Botanigard.
or Botanigard ES, which stands for so WP is potable powder, ES is emulsified solution. There's Mycotrol, I believe, is also a Bouveria bassiana product.
Tea drops are technically, they don't admit it, but they are Bavaria Bassiana.
Oh, okay. But like, so
so I'll have to go to the website then maybe to get the real.
well, the thing is that like, if we're being honest, the label product usually has. It depends on what you're using it for. If you're trying to use it for a drench, what you're trying to attack, even, and what kind of crop you're using it in. Which, of course, here with cannabis, like it's a. I mean, you might. I mean, depends on who you talk to about how you would classify it. Maybe like as a woody annual or something like this.
Bokashi Earthworks carries it. Our own panel member, Russ Brandon. When I go into the commercial greenhouse scale, we're going to be contacting him and trying to.
Oh, he produces it for sale. Had I known that.
He does not actually produce it.
Okay.
No, he
But
sources
sells it. If
He sources
right,
it
if
and
he
he sells it.
sources it and sells it, I'll go to him next time. All right. This is another question since I have Sync Angel. Is it systemic? If I put it in the hole, is it going to go throughout the whole plant, and then when they chew on it, it'll get in them and kill them anyway? That's what I want to hear.
Bouveria bastiana, like I love to talk about, is an endophyte, and so, but in a lot of plants, it's been tested in. But I mean, I'm still cautious to say whether or not it actually is in cannabis, but I like to think that it is because it is so for a lot of other plants. So I feel like it has endophytic capability. Now, what mediates that? There are some things that we know and some things that we don't know. So I know that the more spores you put into the soil or near the roots or onto the plant, even because in research that investigates endophytism from Bouveria, they'll spray it, kind of in a similar way that you would spray it for like as a biopesticide, or they'll inject it even. And of course, the injections usually have the best rate. Now, I mean, I don't know how you would. I don't know if that's an allowable applied way in a commercial market, but I mean, take a look at some research where they describe in the
Pretty
materials and
wild.
methods exactly how they do it.
Right. I read a paper where it's a bacteria that weakens the cell wall of the roots that allows a lot of the the mycorrhiza to penetrate the roots.
Really?
That's why azos, the reason they use azos and mycos together is because, that's, I believe, the reason, because I read a paper and exactly that. They actually have pictures and everything of
Was
how.
it like a physical damaging weakness, or is it more like it helps with the modulation of the genes? Because some
It thins the cell wall, I believe.
Oh, okay.
I'll send you the paper. Yeah.
Yeah, please send me the paper. That's interesting.
Hey,
Yeah,
Doc, we're coming up to the hour. I know you said you were going to hang with us just for about an hour. I wanted to give you a chance, if you're still planning on heading out, to give your sign out.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jack. I appreciate that. Yes, I do have to get going, guys. I'm behind. I need to get grading. I have a midterm this week. I got to figure out like makeup for the students. It's fun torture, but I do have a lot of work, so I can't hang out with you guys for the full 2 hours. I will be back next week. Grower love to everybody. Grower love to the panel. Thanks, guys, for carrying the torch. I just sent you guys a message in the chat there that said that. Thanks to the chat. I have a new video out today after the show. You guys can go check out my YouTube channel. I'd appreciate that. And I'm Dr. MJ Coco from cocoforcannabis.com. Grower love, everybody.
Man, I liked
Peace out.
Peace out. I liked what you had to say about nomenclature and things like that. I thought we had a really great interaction in the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah, I did too. I did too, Matt. We should have a nomenclature show, though. I always worry that we get too far away from cannabis when we do that. I'm like, wait, man, wait, get back onto the cannabis topic. But I love that stuff, man. Thanks for engaging.
I love linguistics. I'm glad you do too, man.
Absolutely. And I hope everybody has a wonderful Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening. Peace out, guys. Grow love.
Peace out, Doc.
Peace
Have a
out.
great
Peace out, Doc.
Have a good week. I wanted to say sometimes it is important to be pedantic, I think, as Matthew likes to say, and which is basically just saying specific about your words, if I'm remembering correctly, in these cases, because it ends up shortening the amount of words we have to say. You can just say one word and the proper word, and then everybody knows what you're talking about once they do the time and effort of like looking up what that word means, especially if it's important to a context like we were talking about earlier, like the whole scotoperiod thing. If we all started saying it, it might be adopted. And I was wondering earlier if maybe scotoperiod is some of the language like when we discovered things or like how we think about it, because maybe we thought about, oh, it's just like, of course the light is what determines whether it flowers, but really we found out maybe later that it was the darkness that determined the flower. So then maybe they changed the terminology then. Like we used to think the earth was flat, some people still do, but then we discover more things and then science changes and updates. Just curious if you guys have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that if you know that the context is going to be at like academic, or you're trying to make a point about like phylogeny or like the like genetic pedigree of a plant, then words like sativa and indica and Himalayensis and all these other sorts of Chinensis and all that becomes a lot more relevant to know exactly what you mean and define your terms. But I think kind of like colloquially, something like, oh man, look at that tall sativa, or oh man, I'm getting the sativa effect. People like know what you mean, even if we know, and there's plenty of words in English where this is also the case, where if you were to literally just like sort of dissect the word, then you would think it meant something else, but that we don't use it that way. And I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I know situations.
We have a lot of confusing shit in English like that.
Go
No,
take
you're
a
totally
leak.
right.
You don't go take a leak. You go give a leak.
Yeah, that's true. You don't take a leak at all. You leave it in the toilet and you flush it down. But Matthew, I was talking about what everybody has improved, or I wasn't. Tao brought up that topic at the beginning, and everybody sort of said something that they changed and saw a big improvement with. I was curious if anything for you in the IPM field, whether it was recent or not, you noticed a big change when you adopted a new strategy or tried a new product or something like that.
You know, I had the opportunity to use an experimental copper product, for the lacewing eggs. They're utilizing, instead of using the larvae, which are also available in multiple areas, they're trying to utilize eggs. Other biocontrol companies also, I think, do lacewing eggs as well. And the advantage of it is that you can get like, 10K or something like this, or 100K, or however, or a ton of them in a small vessel. So it's less money for freight. So it saves copper money. It saves any distributor money. It saves the consumer money, right? The person who's a customer is trying to get this product for cheap, or as cheap as possible. So there's a bunch of logistical reasons why it's really great. But then also for the actual application, you're getting many more per like gram or whatever you want to say about that. I know that historically lacewing eggs were difficult to make viable because of an issue with hatch rate, and just trying to make sure that there's a viability, that you get a percentage that's like makes it kind of worth the math. And I think that copper, so I trialed it a little while ago, once or twice, and there was a pretty significant hatch rate. I'd have to say that the eclosion of larvae was probably, 80%, I think. And I was pretty happy with that. I was pretty happy with that.
For a germ rate.
Yeah,
for
seriously.
some stuff.
Yeah, and I think that the benefit of it still is still inconclusive for me. I think that the main question becomes, well, what's the equation for how much I should use per meter square or whatever? What's my application? Because that's the big thing with biocontrols.
I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah, for anyone who's not been using them, or who has used them in the past and found that they didn't work very well, I have to say that the major reason why biocontrol programs don't work very well is that people don't often apply the right rate. And what I mean by that is that sometimes they have an idea about how much it should be, and it's not actually the case, or they've used an amount that has worked in the past and it didn't work this time for whatever reason, and maybe they were confounding, or there were sort of variables that changed that influenced the efficacy. Something as simple as quality control at the insectary, to packaging malfunction, to supply lines get delayed. It could be some issue with a new product with a manufacturing process, for example. There's a ton of reasons, or maybe it gets really hot, or maybe like the package was delivered to you but didn't get into the fridge in time, and they perish, or something.
I have an IPM question that I know you and Spartan could probably help answer. Light 1978 says, I've been using plant therapy as my IPM in veg and stopped 2 weeks before transition. Is there anything negative I should know using it, if any, or if any? I don't get the last part of that, but I have heard it's a oil, so you don't want to use sulfur within, some people say 2 weeks, but I believe Spartan Grown, who's hitting a bong right now, says 1 week. It's been okay in the past. But I was curious if Matthew or Spartan had any more thoughts on plant therapy, if there's anything to look out for or worry about.
I always say the same thing, which is that I'm always hesitant to apply anything really post-flower, which I know eliminates a ton of options for a lot of people, and that might be sort of conservative of me to feel that way. I do know that there's cases where people feel like it's necessary, and if they're using something very soft, then maybe they feel more comfortable doing it. I'm just always worried about inner ingredients and that sort
They
of
actually
thing.
even said they're going to stop before they transition to flower. So in this case, they wouldn't even have to worry about that. So I think they're just wondering if there's anything negative that could come up in veg. I know Brandon Rust has talked a little bit about how using any horticultural oil, whether it's, plant therapy or anything that has, I've seen the microbe people put out their mammoth microbe IPM, which has like thyme oil or thyme oil, however you want to pronounce it. And that's a horticultural oil. And one of the papers Brandon sent me in an email long ago said that certain oils can change like the phenotypic expression of a plant by using them. And that's why I believe he uses Dr. Zymes, which is a enzyme versus oils, which is just
you can definitely choke out a plant by choking the stomata with using horticultural oil. That's an important thing to consider. But yeah.
Knowing the dilution rate should help that not happen. Making sure that you're only applying it at the levels they suggest.
I've got a couple points on this. One, when you brought up for the sulfur and how they react with each other, the oil and the sulfur don't mix well together. You can burn the shit out of your plants. I apply my sprays with an atomizer, so the droplet size is really small. If you don't have an atomizer, that's not an option for you. You want, in the agricultural field, it's called a sticker spreader, but in the cannabis, they'll call it surfactant, something like that. And that's just fancy words for something to spread the water so the droplets don't beat up on the outside of your plant. You can use Dawn dish soap if you want to, just like a drop of it in a gallon of water is enough. Now, another thing besides the droplet size and the surfactant is you have to remember that if you're going to be using predators in any way, these are going to affect them negatively too. So it sounds like you're using it in veg, which is nice. So hopefully you're not using predators in veg. If you do want to, what we do, even at work at Botanical, we'll go ahead and use those oils and sprays where in veg. As soon as they go into flower, they get all their predators applied and they never get sprayed again. So you could do something like that. You could save your predators for flower and use your plant therapy in the veg.
Definitely agree about the integration with sulfur, with whether they're a microbial or sort of a predatory mite or insect or something like this. It can definitely have disruptive effects for sure.
I just realized that I forgot to say what I've changed recently that made an improvement in my garden. I have two things that I couldn't really decide between. One was starting to use vermicompost or worm castings. I know that seems like an obvious thing for a lot of people, but the second I added that, which was probably 4 years ago in my garden, I've noticed the plants were just a lot happier, and since then the flavor has been a lot better. I think there's something to do with the microbials, but also like some calcium in the castings and a whole bunch of other stuff. I don't know the exact science behind why or what, but I know that I really like the results since I've started using castings, and I'll never ever stop. Like, you couldn't pay me to stop using castings, is the way I've heard somebody else say it, and I feel the exact same way. But the next thing that I saw really major improvement with, and is not system I was using was poor, it's because I was over wattage and over ppfd for my grow space. Like Dr. MJ talked about, he just cut down to a 4x2, which is 8 square feet. I'm growing currently in a 3x1.6, which is 5 square feet. And often people think I'm growing in a 4x2, which I'm not. But I was using a 315 cmh, which is meant for 9 square feet, which is 4 square feet larger than the grow space I was growing in. Now, granted, I hung it higher than it should have been hung and used a shit ton of fans, and during the summer months had to run air conditioning and made it work to get a few harvests in. Once I switched over to LED and had a more proper wattage, like a Timber Grow Lights 2VL, which is a 220 watt draw, and I did a little custom LED on top of that, but the total is under 250 versus 315 watts. And granted, my yield has gone down since switching slightly per harvest. I'd say the quality and consistency is skyrocketed, and it's just much easier for me to get a consistent ppfd across the canopy. There's not any hot spots. It's just, I don't know, I really like the modern LED systems, and I got to shout out Timber Grow Lights because they're local here in San Diego. They're moving from cobs over to the bar style, which seems to be more popular these days, but I've had great results with the cobs. If you hang them at the right height and keep the temperature and humidity and nutrients and everything all dialed in, I think that people will be really, really happy with the modern day LEDs. They're getting much cheaper and much better every day. So it's like really awesome to see first time growers knocking it out of the park with affordable grow lights that don't absolutely suck. Sorry, my cat's over here chewing on my mic a little bit. So, but yeah, there's definitely so much that we could change. And I'm with you that everybody mostly on the panel said we change a little bit each run because we're always trying to dial in and constantly tinker and experiment and see how we can make it just that little bit better, or get maybe a bit more percentage of yield or more percentage of terpenes or flavor or whatever it is. We're always trying to improve in one way or another. And I'm really glad that we could all go around the panel and share something that worked for us, because I think it'll be insightful for a lot of the growers that are listening. But the second topic that I wanted to kind of go into this evening, I DM'd the chat about, was sharing a little bit about ourselves, maybe on the more personal side, getting to know us as people, but also cannabis related. Is there any music? And I'll start off with two to start the conversation a little bit. I used to listen to Cottonmouth Kings, Cottonmouth with a K. They are a cannabis music centric band. And one of the, I don't think he's in the band, but somebody who's like one of their managers, the Real Big Smo, just shouted us out on Instagram. So shout out to him. That was pretty cool. He's got a pretty large following. So hopefully some of the people here tonight are from seeing his post over there on IG. That'd be pretty cool to see you guys. Shout out to you if you are. Another band I really grew up listening to, or God, there's so many, but I was going to say Bob Marley, but I'll go with something more local. Sublime, Long Beach, California. They're really great cannabis culture and music, and there's a lot of songs like Smoke Two Joints that specifically reference cannabis. And I think that stuff does more than people realize, because music is part of our culture. And not to like make this like that sort of discussion, but culture is something that's really important to any country and all people. And if we like music, food, language, those things all have a much greater impact than a lot of people think about, because they just accept it as their culture. Oh, that's just like how we were raised. That's part of our culture. That's how we are. But for everybody else, it's not within our culture. It's not that way. So it's cool to share those little bits of culture with each other, and maybe somebody will find out a musician or band that they haven't heard of and get into that music, because that can be a really fun way. And like another one I'll shout out last before I pass it on to Predicative Breeding is Mendo Dope. Fucking Mendo Dope. They have some songs where they can literally teach you how to grow. Like if you don't know how to grow, they teach you from like seed to harvest, and with good information. And it's like good music too. So like I bump their shit all the time. So shout out to Mendo Dope. Kyle, Predicative Breeding, you've been quiet over there. Is there any cannabis related music that you're interested in? Or if not, like related to cannabis, is there stuff that you like to listen to when you indulge in cannabis?
Yeah, actually, well, the whole time when you were kind of saying that, I was like, damn, I don't even really know of anybody. Yeah, I would have to say for me, it would be Bone Thugs and Harmony. I don't know if any of you guys listen to that. stuff. But that's
Hell yeah, man. I actually I ran track with Lazy Bone's son. He came to all of my
wow.
track meets, so they're fucking awesome. I love Bone Thugs. I'm from Cleveland. Shout out to Bone Thugs.
Yeah, there's just something about like mad peaceful about their music, especially yeah, they got good stuff. But I'm kind of like a weird hybrid. I started off like enjoying rap, and then I went into country. No, I'm sorry, rap, and then I actually became like a metalhead kind of. So I actually was in a band as a vocalist doing like stuff like Kill Switch Engage and stuff like that. And then I went to country, and now I just kind of like listen to almost a little bit of everything. But yeah, I'd have to say Bone Thugs and Harmony is definitely like, if I had to like pick a song or I want to say a band. It's not a band, a group to listen to. I would head that route.
Have you heard of Wheeler Walker Jr.? He's a country guy who does a lot of like kind of comical cannabis songs. He's got some really funny ones. You should definitely look into him if you like country. I think you'll like it because very entertaining cannabis content for sure.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
The American one, I know you're over there with that awesome accent. I don't want to say where it's from. I think most people already know. Is there any good music that you like to listen to while you're imbibing in cannabis, or even cannabis related or specific that you enjoy?
Yeah, I enjoy any song that is cannabis related. I always listen to reggae, and I even have a post on IG with the country songs. You got now I won't remember the guy's name. Oh, Toby Keith, maybe. Yeah, Toby Keith. He has a good one.
Is that I'll Never Smoke Weed with Willie Again?
No, it's a different one. Yeah,
who's that by?
And it's Toby Keith too, but that's a better.
Right.
The one Todd put up was even better. I hadn't heard it, and I added it to my playlist.
Yeah. And there's like a couple other old ones, really old ones. Cab Calloway. I have a whole playlist of all cannabis tunes from all genres. But I like to listen to reggae a lot. And like you said, Sublime. Cheech and Chong have some songs. Go ahead, Kyle. Is he chiming in?
I think he was just pocket. I think he was going to mute himself or unmute himself.
Sorry about that, boys.
No worries.
No worries.
And yeah, there's a couple rare ones. It's there's one I know that's there. He's talking about it's 5 o'clock somewhere, but it's always 4:20 here. It's like kind of like a Jimmy Buffett kind of sounding tune. So yeah, I like it all, and I always listen to classic rock more or less. Classic rock and reggae is my general, but then when I get in the mood, I listen to all cannabis tunes. Yeah,
I'm with you on that. I also definitely love the reggae. Some of the messages in that shit is like literally like legalize it and telling you all the medical benefits, but like also just like overcoming like the one police and helicopter, like talking about them coming to if they continue to burn up the herb, we will burn down the cane tree, which is basically like the Rasta saying, if you keep chopping down our herb, we're gonna come and hit you where it hurts in your money because we know you make your money off the cane, and if you're gonna hit us where it hurts with the cannabis and the herb, then we're gonna get you where it hurts with the cane tree or plant. So very interesting. I lost my train of thought. You were talking about reggae, but you had one other one. Squirrel.
The old ones. There's a whole bunch of old ones from the jazz times with like Cab Calloway, and there's a chick sings one. The Viper. I'm a Viper, and a couple of High Times put out a couple of pot related songs that have a varying genres in them too.
I just remembered it wasn't necessarily like a song, but it was a band or group that a lot of cannabis people use. I was late to the party. I never saw them live, but the Grateful Dead, like I'd consider myself a Deadhead. Even Dead and Company has some really good music, just like Sublime has Sublime with Rome. I've liked some of Sublime with Rome's music since he's passed. Rome was their lead singer, I believe. And yeah, it's just so much good music. Matthew Sentinel, have you any music that you enjoy on the cannabis side of things, or just that I know you're a music producer, you make your own music as well, so maybe you could talk a little about that.
Music producer still feels really pretentious to say, but I guess musician maybe. But I like to make a lot of ambient music, which I would say a lot of people might associate with like psychedelic substances in general, and I suppose also cannabis in that stead.
One thing I'll say about your music is it reminds me of Kid Cudi, who's another Cleveland local artist that I like. But when I stopped using cannabis for like 5 years, when I got in trouble with the law, um, I stopped enjoying his music as much. And as soon as I started using cannabis again, I started liking it. And there's some of that sort of like electric. And the reason I said production or music producer is because like it's sort of like I don't know how the technical terms. I don't want to insult you for the stuff that you
No,
create.
just say it.
But it's like digitally created music.
Yeah,
It's not,
it's
you're not
electronic
playing an
music.
instrument.
Yeah, although I'm a mediocre clarinetist and sort of novice flautist, most of the music I make is not with those instruments, but with electronic with my computer. Yeah.
And I enjoy it when I'm particularly medicated. I will say that more than sober. Not to like call it out, but I think that trend, like you said, it goes well for people that are on psychedelics or even really strong cannabis.
Yeah, I actually, since we're speaking about music, Anthony Fantano, the internet's busiest music nerd, on YouTube, he made a video a little while ago, talking about how, like, in his opinion, like music that like you have to be like high to enjoy, or you have to have some sort of intoxicated or altered state of consciousness to enjoy, like is kind of like, in his opinion, not great music. But to me, I feel like it just depends on your mood. I mean, so many other things I think matter much more, and of course your mood is influenced by your mental state. But like you can be sad and also intoxicated, or you can be happy and intoxicated, or you could have all these other things happen while you're intoxicated, right? You know what I mean? So
For me,
I mean,
it's like almost a stimuli
it's
thing.
only
Like when
one facet,
when I
basically.
use cannabis, I feel like I'm more sensitive to anything, whether it's smell, whether it's a taste or vision. Like things seem brighter, music sounds better, food tastes better, all of that. So like when you're listening to a song that maybe is more like has a lot of synth, for example, like the quality of that sound, like the vibration of that sound, I just feel like maybe you can understand or hear the depths of it more, or you experience them in a greater
Like an
way.
enhancer. Yeah, I definitely feel that way. It can be that way for me, at least. For for me, I also feel like ambient music, like the kind of music that I make, that can be very like slow, also like kind of rapid. You've also attributed my music to being similar to like, or was it? I liked a lot of chopped and screwed stuff when I was growing up too, and that definitely influenced my style.
That,
Um,
and I said video game. It was like chopped and screwed, and also kind of like almost like a video game soundtrack in some of the songs.
Definitely. I do take heavy influence from like Shigeru Sugisu, who made the Neon Genesis Evangelion Rebuild series as total background music and all the scenes. I like a lot of music from various video game producers, a lot of video game music. I'll put it this way. I like a lot of instrumental music too, where there's no vocals, or I like a lot of choral sort of organ music, that kind of stuff. But I find that a lot of the really cool stuff that I like is happening not in, orchestras or in theater or opera or anything like that, but it's happening in like video games and that sort of a thing, and movies. And so it's just nice to see those kinds of scores kind of get rebirthed and remixed and that kind of a thing. I
He's asking
Television.
a lot of times in chat. People are wondering where they can hear your music, Matt. So I think you should share.
Oh, I wasn't even looking. Yeah, you can find me on SoundCloud with the same name, Sync Angel, if you're interested. It's definitely not something, as I've said before, that you'd bump in the club, but I do think it's a valid music type, and I really like ambient music, and I hope you like it. That's my one goal when making music, is that when I share it, if people like it, that's great. I'll always still like it. Um, I had one other thing to say. Oh yeah, speaking of Mr. Fantano, I saw he shared this tweet that was like he said like vaporwave and like slowed down music in that way is like gentrified, chopped and screwed, and I kind of feel the same. Although I do like to make that kind of music, and I am a white guy, but I definitely like that influence of music for sure, and a lot of classical music and operatic music as well. I realize I just took this time talking all about me, but
So it's all
Yeah.
about, though. I think people like to learn more of the personal. I really like fucking talking shit with Eagle because he goes into the personal more than we often do on the show. So I think it's nice to. We did talk about growing at the first half of the hour. Now we're talking a little bit about music. I think we can even go into like movies and television. You see me over here petting my cat, who's an absolute attention whore. She's a lap cat, and she'll just jump up on me any opportunity she gets. So she wanted to join the show this evening. This is Tallulah, named after the bobsled in Cool Runnings. Her brother's name is
Great.
Sanka, who's the Rasta from Cool Runnings. So, but yeah, Matthew, I personally, like I said, maybe I already said this earlier, but I do enjoy your music, and it's very unique. I would say that it's not like something that you're going to hear on the radio. It's you have some longer tracks and some stuff that's just, it's not like what you traditionally hear on the radio, which I think is interesting. I really like different and unique music, and not always having like lyrics in the songs. I think is can be really interesting, especially for like set and setting. Maybe you want to use it to study or just relax and vibe to, versus like having to focus on lyrics all the time.
You want to know a genre of music I really like when intoxicated? That's I like those. It's it's just gonna make me look even more weird. I like opera, and I also like Japanese enka, which is kind of like it's actually a very recent phenomenon, but it's almost like an operatic power ballad kind of music. And of course, it's in Japanese. So if you don't understand the language, I still think Japanese is a very musical language. And I also am a big fan of sort of a Taiwanese or Hong Kong opera, where it's very common for people to like like what's it called? Like it's not vibrato, but like when people like change the pitch of their voices really dramatically, like through the syllables of like a word or something, they do that really well. And
In the middle of the word.
yeah,
Vibrato is the only word that I have to describe that. I don't know. That's vibrato would be my best guess for that word.
yeah. But this is
Noah, I see you got your hand up. I feel like I totally skipped over you in the music
oh yeah, let's let
conversation.
him speak.
Yeah, no, like I was saying here in the chat, I was always a big fan of Last Dance with Mary Jane by Tom Petty growing up. I love that. I love, I'm a big classic rock guy too, so I love Steve Miller Band, Joker. I'm a smoker, that
Fuck
song.
yeah.
I always love that. Everybody
Yeah.
loves that one, but I was surprised no one took that one. But no, shout out to fucking Talking Shit with Eagle. I was supposed to do a show here a couple weeks ago, but with my ankle, I couldn't do it, but I'm gonna do it, and I'm excited to do that. But I'm a big, huge music guy, especially, I'm sure as all you guys as growers know, if you're going to be a grower, you better learn how to work by yourself. You better learn how to do stuff. And music just keeps me going and just keeps me kind of occupied. And so I totally dig, listening to music while I'm working. And I totally vibe when I'm, working my grower or smoking or whatever, so.
I think that's.
I got some. Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry. I was saying, I wrote them down too, so I wouldn't forget because I'm getting pretty fucking high here. But I mean, there's some big holes we didn't mention that we have to at least, like, come on, Cypress Hill.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah.
Afro Man, come on, Afro Man. Snoop Dogg.
Snoop Dogg.
Now for Snoop Dogg, I'm gonna say my favorite one is a little maybe obscure, but California Roll. Anytime I'm high, that's like my fucking thing. I love that fucking song. And then I wrote down a couple that are a little bit more little
Obscure.
Just that people might not know, but Odd Squad Family, and they have this song called they have a lot of good songs, but they have this one song called Smoke My Pain. It's just amazing. I love it. So yeah, check out Odd Squad Family, and it's a really cool story because there's the one that's like an albino. One guy, he's like I don't know if he's got like missing hands and he's got like missing feet, but they're all just out there just killing it. They're out of Florida. And then what was my other one I had written down? Oh, Big Smo. I checked out some of his stuff, and I actually watched his show whenever that was on. It was a while ago. It was years ago. That's how I originally heard about him. But I had forgotten about him until the shout out today. So I went back and was looking at some of his other stuff, and he's got a song called Neighbors, which is excellent. Check that one out. It's great. But basically there's a line in there talking about how he smokes and he drinks and his neighbors know about it. That's like, oh, that's great. It's an excellent song too. But I was like more wanting to just express that for me, it doesn't have to be a song about cannabis. Cannabis is just like it does everything else. Like I always call it a life enhancer. It enhances music. Like for
Oh
me,
yeah.
background, I used to play saxophone. I mean, all through school. So for me, like when I get high and then listen to music, I can actually pull out more parts of that ensemble. Like I might start hearing some drums or a weird, you know,
Hi-hats in the background.
or yeah, or clarinets or horns, and it blows my mind. And then after I come down from my high, if I hear that song again, I can now pick those parts out that I never would have even heard if I hadn't have been high to pick them out. So I
I
love
definitely
the
agree.
nuance with it. And then
Tunnel
another
hearing.
thing. Yeah. And and the other thing I'd written down was I don't know about everybody else, but for me, music is I don't want to say it's like life, but it really can affect my mood. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I like a lot of different kinds of music, but if I'm going to be high, I can't play sad songs or songs that make me sad because it just I'll be sitting here bawling, dude. I just can't. So if you have a big long playlist, make sure you have the sad songs in a different playlist to where you're not high because it can really make you depressed and get you going.
Yo, I remember
I agree.
the
Go ahead, Tao.
Tone Loc with Chiba Chiba. Chiba Chiba. You guys know that one? And
do.
Rick James, Mary Jane.
I got a few
All right, I won't.
Garth Cultivator and Underrated. They have a album called Black Markets Matter, which has a song with Mendo Dope on there. It's really good. Pato Bonton, who the American ones actually personally met, I high-fived him at one of his shows here in San Diego. He has a song called Legalize It that was written by Peter Tosh that came out in like 2000 that says like 15 different medical ailments that cannabis helps, and they've all since come out to like be proven by studies. And it's like, holy fucking shit, these rastas that were on the mountains saying it was medicine for so long were fucking right all along. And shout out to reggae for at least making it in my head. Like when I was in ninth grade, I gave a fucking presentation to my health class about legalizing medical cannabis in Ohio, where it was like absolutely not okay. And the teacher is like, you basically just said like you want to legalize cannabis. And at the time I like didn't have the response like all cannabis is medicinal. But I wish I would have had that come back at the time. But some more people in there, Ghetto Boys, they've got a really good one. G Code and some other music. Scarface on My Block is a really good song for getting a little stoned and listening to. And the last one, Willie Nelson, gotta shout out Willie. He's got probably more music than anybody. He's got like the biggest discography you'll ever fucking see. You couldn't listen to every Willie Nelson song within like a month because there's so much fucking Willie music. It's amazing.
Don't forget the dad song.
When I'm stoned, it's also Jimi Hendrix and Pink Floyd too. So,
hell yeah,
great there.
Oh, there was some new chick song. I'll go find it. That's totally cool for like all the women that are out there. She's like sitting at a kitchen table. She's like, everything sucks, but I can smoke a joint and love life. I'll go find it.
You know, I just saw a video of Maroon 5 did. I don't even know the name of the song, but the whole time he's sitting there smoking a cone, and at the end there's a big blurb that comes on. It's just white text on a black background saying how the time for marijuana decriminalization is now. And, you know, it's just ridiculous what's going on. I thought that was a pretty big step for that. And now I guess it's not as mainstream to watch videos anymore, but still, that was a pretty big step for a mainstream kind of band or whatever to do that.
They have millions of followers. I mean, and that makes an impact. Like I was talking about earlier, I think going back to Tommy Chong, I personally met him at the Lowell Cafe. My wife won some giveaway, and talking to him and like realizing how much impact that one motherfucker really had on the whole world. Like he made movies that changed the way people thought about cannabis and the people that use cannabis. He made it not just like criminals and drug addicts. He made it like you and I, like it was anybody can use cannabis. You know, he made it real people and funny and entertaining. And it wasn't this crazy fucking whacked out reefer madness shit that we've been fed for like the previous 40, 50 years. So music can make a huge difference, and it exposes people that would have never open their eyes to it because they love that band so much. So when that band says it, they might be staunchly anti-cannabis, but they're like, well, maybe if my fucking band that I like listens to it or uses it and they think it's okay, then maybe I should reevaluate. So it's a great time. I
couldn't agree more. I think music is one of the most influential in my life. It is because on my TV, I have a smart TV, and I'll put it on the music video channel, like Vivo or something. I got a Vivo channel that I'll just sit there and watch music videos more than I watch any kind of TV because I don't know. It's just I'd rather listen to music.
I love that, man. Until my record player broke, I used to just come home and like yank a record off the wall and like stick it on there and listen to that and smoke and like not have anything on the TV. And I have
Yeah.
like a Google Chrome, whatever the thing you stick into any regular TV that turns it into a smart
Oh
TV.
yeah.
Chromecast is what it's called. They're like $30 or something. So I can just cast my music to it. Now I have like a playlist that I listen to every night before bed. That's like 5 or 6 songs that calm me down and are just like really good mood and like cannabis related. So definitely totally agree with you on the music kind of being able to impact your life a lot more. There's even psychology studies that talk about like while you're driving, if you're listening to like high rate music, people are more likely to speed because their like heart rate's up. They get like more adrenaline going and they're like more racy. Or, like the lower rate or like classical, like calming music, people are going to drive a little bit more appropriately. Noah, I see you got your hand up. What's going on?
Yeah, I was just gonna say so about my growing up. I'm kind of an older guy. We watched MTV, and they have a lot of different programs on. But when they had music videos on, it was just so cool. And that's when I was Tom Petty, Mary Jane's Last Day, and that video was so cool. And that was just
Yeah,
a
it
really cool
was.
experience growing up. I remember listening to that and watching it. So
I grew up watching music videos on MTV, and I remember like when it changed, when they stopped, and it became like The Real World and Road Rules and all that crazy ass shit, and it was all reality shows, and they literally stopped playing music videos on MTV at a certain point where it's like you
Still
can't
had
even find them.
VH1 for a while and MTV2, but then MTV2 went the same way as MTV1, and VH1 did the same fucking thing, and it was like So was watching CM. What was CMT? I think it was the country music. And there was a rap one too.
BET,
BT had
Black
it, yeah.
Entertainment Television.
But that got a bunch of movies on it. Then after that, they just started playing movies. So yeah, they just it always changes. I don't know why they can't have a music channel.
What's the song? Video killed the radio star.
Yeah, that was the very first one that they played on MTV. Very first thing ever was that video.
How precocious. But I mean, that's how it goes, I suppose.
I think that we've all touched on music a good amount. Is there any television programs or movies that you guys are fans of on the cannabis side? We got about 30 minutes left here. I figure we could throw out, since it's just titles, and we could touch briefly on like some of the context of certain ones and why we like them. It goes by fairly quick. So, Spartan, I know you giggled. I'm sure you got one in your head that you're thinking about.
No,
or at
I
least a
was
few.
laughing. No, I laughed to myself because I just got done saying how I didn't watch shit. I just watched music videos.
Oh yeah, shit. I'm sure you've seen a cannabis movie at one point in your life.
No, the only one I can think of off the top of my head is Tommy Chong in that '70s show. I love that.
Yeah, he's awesome in that. That's where I got exposed to Tommy Chong first, and that's what got me into his movies. Up in Smoke is a great one by Tommy Chong. If you haven't seen it already, it's highly recommended.
Yeah, I don't like those old ones because they make us look like potheads. So it's kind of like good and bad. But I hate that stereotypical.
Just referring to specifically the Cheech and Chong or all old stoner comedy.
Well, even that '70s show makes doesn't portray him in such great light.
But he's a business
So-
owner and he owns the business,
True.
and like it does kind of show that like there were people. I think it was great in showing that like there are people that own businesses and are just like huge stoners and potheads that are all on that way of the spectrum. But he was successful and like always kind of figured out a way to, even though he'd fuck up a lot of the time, like his brother was like a carpenter and they'd fuck up and they get high. Like they moved everything in the basement the one time, famously like a few inches to the left is like the basement, a few inches to the left, and like Red and Kitty got all pissed off because it looked like there was no change at all. Sink
Watch
Angel,
Stoned.
Matthew.
My favorite movie to watch Stone is Big Lebowski. I don't think there's really much. Oh, I guess
I like The Big Lebowski. I think that's a good one, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any other ones that are cannabis related or stuff that you like to watch while medicated?
Like not specifically, really. I would say that sort of in the similar way that like cannabis can enhance, like if I'm like pensive
Yes.
or if I'm trying to like, yeah, like if I'm an analytical kind of person and if I am trying to focus and be analytical and I'm trying to like take in a lot and kind of process it. Maybe this is sort of surprising to other people considering the stereotype that Tal was just referring to. But I do find that it can be very useful for focusing in And sometimes you get tunnel vision, so you have to be aware of that. It has an effect on your mind, of course, on your headspace. But like I like to talk heady topics while intoxicated. I like to listen to the kinds of music that I enjoy in that way, which are a lot. It's a very, very diverse amount. But for movies and that sort of thing, like cool action scenes, fight scenes, that sort of a thing. Things where there's a lot of intricate things going on. I think I find that it's that much more amazing, or it can be that much more fantastic, or kind of like what Spartan said, you might notice things that you hadn't earlier. So, and then I do pick them up, when I'm not intoxicated.
Yeah.
Star Wars lightsaber scenes are always like that for me. Whenever they have like the spaceship fucking battles or lightsabers, I'm like, holy fuck! Like it feels like you're in it way more. It's like not even a 3D movie, but you're like really a lot more engaged.
Oh, I can remember catching such a strong elbow sitting in the theater watching what movie? It was whatever the very first Star Wars movie where you see, it was one of the newer ones, where you could see Yoda fighting with a lightsaber, like flinging around and stuff and everything. Everybody,
Like Insidious.
yeah, everybody was sitting there like in awe and enjoying it, and I just bust out laughing hysterically because it looks so hilarious with a Muppet flying. And I caught such a hard elbow for that one, man. I'll never forget that.
That's funny, man. I had admittedly bootleg DVDs back in the day, and 2 copies that it seemed like whenever my buddies came over and we got stoned was Superbad was one. I've seen it literally 100 plus times because
I
like
don't like that movie at all.
watch it like over and over and over.
Oh, when they pull over the kids and they're on shrooms, that is the best scene in the world, dude. That is so relate.
You're
Oh, no,
thinking
that's
of
Super
Super
Troopers.
Troopers.
That's
Super
one.
Troopers.
Yeah, Super Troopers. That's it. Sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Also a
Super
great
Troopers, that's
movie. Big fan. But the other one I had was probably less well known. It's called "Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Sipping Your Juice in the Hood," and I've seen that one probably 100 times. And it's like the Wayans brothers, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Like,
Can you say that title again?
don't be a menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood. I think I wrote sipping
Nice.
in the chat,
I
but I
like
think it's
that.
drinking.
I like that.
I think that's the
Days to
longest
Confuse is the one we watched growing up, man. We watched Days to Confuse for
Oh,
a couple summers when I was in 10th, 11th grade, like at least, once a week we watched that movie. I love that movie so much.
Oh, and
Dude.
Iron too, and Chad. So How High and Half Baked, both. Really
Those were the 2 I was just gonna bring up as like the at least in my lifetime that those were like the famous stoner comedies. How
Yeah,
High
watch.
and Half Baked.
There's something about Mary High, dude. I laughed so freaking hard the first time I watched that.
That's a funny movie.
That's a great movie.
Brett Favre makes a cameo. Shout out to the greatest quarterback ever to live. No, I'm just kidding. Oh man, we are definitely getting into the weeds with the movie conversation. Kyle, do you have any movies that stand out to you as being enjoyable to watch while you're high or cannabis themed?
Yeah, my favorite movie is one of my favorite movies. Well, you mentioned one of them was Half Baked, and then the movie Blow. That's a wicked good movie.
Great fucking movie.
Amazing movie, 100%.
I'm gonna meet George Jung this year, actually, or next year. He's
Really?
trying to get into the legal cannabis market in California now, so we might actually be working with him for like advertising and stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah, he just got released from jail. What, like a year ago or 2 years ago, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Dude's lived a crazy ass life. I can only imagine. Can't wait to meet that guy.
You know what I find interesting, Jack? It's like the movie paints a picture where he was basically like completely broke, which is why he was trying to do one last run, have some money. But I feel like the odds of him not storing some of his money is it can't be true. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that was because he didn't want people searching for his shit while he was in there, and also
Obviously.
like making more of a case against himself.
Right.
One I wanted to throw out there that is more recent, but I loved it as much as it's like a stoner cliche movie. It's Pineapple Express with Seth Rogen.
Classic.
It's so good. And like when he goes into the dealer for that scene that they released like a year and a half before the movie, like when I they had the promo for the movie. It was when he'd go in and they were talking about the Pineapple Express, and the guy comes over and he sells him the Snickle Fritz or whatever. Like that scene when he's describing the Pineapple Express, he's like, "Oh, if this Northern Lights Blue Oyster shit had a baby, and that Snow fucking Cap whatever Purple Tahoe had a baby, and those two fucked and they met and they had this." It's like, it just, that got me, because I've met so many people out here in California and everywhere in the cannabis space where it's just like we've all kind of met a guy a little bit like that, and they hit the nail on the head a lot of times in that movie. And sometimes there is, like, you could pick up a joint and hit it and be like, "Oh, this is the fucking Pineapple Express," like, especially if it's like a new thing, it just dropped, or only so many people have it and it's got a really distinct flavor or smell. But a lot of people would argue that's not the case. Some cannabis might not be that recognizable or iconic quite yet, but some stuff certainly seems to be in the flavor department. Has everybody had a chance to share a movie that they I think I went all the way around. There's only 6 of us tonight. I'm used to having more people juggling everybody.
Fear and
I think we did.
good when they're talking.
Oh, there you go.
Well, there's The Wall, stuff that, I remember watching when Stone was par for the course.
There's a good one called Acapulco Gold on YouTube. You can watch about the import of the actual Acapulco Gold and just Mexican in general. I was surprised to see they fucking swam it from Mexico to the US. They'd get it to the Tijuana checkpoint, and there was a dude who would go out in the middle of the fucking night, which, talk about the balls on that, because as a lobster diver, I'll tell you, that's when the fucking sharks are out and that's when they're feeding. And there's tons of kelp forest between, Mexico and where he was swimming it to drop off the loads. And they videotaped this fucker do it. You watch him on the one side of the border, go out, swim out, fucking kick with his load, and drops it off on the beach in the United States. So Acapulco Gold on YouTube, definitely a worthwhile movie. Tons of cool shit in that movie. But
I think I'm wanting to jump out of here now, guys, if I can.
Yeah, absolutely. We got about 15 minutes. Spartan, give your sign out.
Just thanks for having me again. Love stopping in and talking. And this was a pretty cool episode here. It's different. It's not something that's a little bit different. So it was cool, and it was fun to interact and chat. I had a lot of time in chat today, so that was really cool. Shout out to chat. And I guess I'm just gonna say grows love, and you can find me on Instagram, Spartan Grown.
Happy growing,
Thank you so
man.
much, Spartan Grown, for coming. I want to shout out a viewer, Lighted Up Tim, who's off and on fucking talking shit with Eagle, says a movie called Savage about weed. I think it's called Savages, is about weed, and talks about like the Mexican cartel, and there's like these 2 guys who share a girlfriend, which kind of seems a little weird for a lot of people, but really well made movie. There's like a military guy and then like the kind of like softer guy, but they both go into like big weed business, and it shows all the implications of like them kind of fighting against the cartel. And fucking crazy movie, but really interesting and cannabis related. So great recommendation there, Tim.
See you guys.
Later, Spartan. Thank you. Well, we've got about 13 minutes left. I want to also go ahead and say thank you to the chat. Mama Los, I Gruesome, Dr. EW, Smart Poker, Aldridge 25, Mr. Bagseed, lots of you guys in here tonight. Make sure you're all subscribed to the channel if you're not already. Make sure to like this video. We always appreciate that. That helps the Cheap Home grow, continue forward, and spread the word to more people so we can get as many people knowing how to grow cheaply as possible or affordably. So we appreciate all that good stuff. Sometimes it's good to do those little reminders because we often don't promote ourselves as much as we probably should. I think we give several hours. I mean, this is our 85? Yeah, 85. So 85 times 2. I mean, we're over 160 hours of content that we've freely given to the community. So I think that a lot of the people here do appreciate it. We just all forget to hit that thumbs up button sometimes because you have to click out of the chat and then you have to come back in and get out of top chat, go over to the live chat, which can be a pain in the butt. But we do appreciate that little bit of effort because it helps us out. We're not making any money off this. It's not for ad revenue. It's not for anything like that. It's literally just to help people find the show. So thank you all for doing that if you choose to do it. If not, no hard feelings. We still love you anyway. Even if you hit the thumbs down, you're still a viewer and you're counted. So we appreciate everybody who's here, including you, W Digger, who just at Jack. I hope everybody's doing well. Maybe they sent me a message earlier that I didn't see. Does anybody have some final thoughts that they want to throw in that could be brief before we give our final shout outs? Because we do only have about 10 minutes left now.
Only to tell people that if you really liked the linguistic debate or the nomenclature debate that we kind of had, or the conversation, it wasn't really a debate, but I love that kind of stuff. I did mention that I like to talk about heady topics while intoxicated and also while I'm talking with all of you on the panel. I would just recommend that people look into that because I'm a lover of language and I'm a lover of, like, I guess you could say, like, philosophy of the mind and that kind of thought process and communication, that kind of a thing. It's very important. As somebody who uses big words sometimes, a lot of the time, and has in the past been insecure about it, but not so much anymore. I just want to shout out people who also like to use those big words and or just the right word, the specific word for things, and shout out to those people who do it no matter what. I know that sounds
Semantics do
weird.
matter, and there's a great show for people that are like that called Away with Words on NPR, I think. But I think they have it hosted online now, where they talk about like the origins of some words, some phrases that are commonly used, but maybe we don't understand the meaning behind them all. And I think sometimes that stuff can be really interesting because if you learn the background behind it all, it makes it a lot easier to remember the actual meaning of the word and why people use it and things like that. It can be really interesting. I mean, we talked about it for literally the first half an hour of the show tonight was pretty much all diving into the semantics and making sure that we are kind of on the same page as people. I have an episode of Greenstock Talks, episode 0 is what I labeled it, where I did what I called the Grow Dictionary because there's so many abbreviations, whether it's like, even like just the word like topping, saying topping, that has a very specific meaning in cannabis, but somebody who's brand new might not know what that means. So talking about like the process that you're doing to the plant related to that term and explaining it to a new grower, I think is important. So if anybody is like confused by all of what I call the alphabet soup of like uh, LST or CMH and CFL and all those like different things that we talk about in growing, and we just say the abbreviation and assume everybody knows what we're talking about. If you're often lost with that kind of stuff, episode 0 of Greenstock Talks is literally targeted at you. It's to help new people, whether they're growers or not, wanting to get into the community, have less of a barrier to entry. Because I looked for that and I couldn't find it. I saw a few lists and I literally read those lists on the show and gave my interpretation of what those terms meant, because I think it helps a lot if we're all at least on a similar page, even if it's not perfect. Most people use a certain set of terminology. So if we're all at least trying, hopefully we can avoid what that philosopher talked about of, 100% of communication not being ever transmitted. So hopefully we can get as close to that number as possible.
Yeah, I have a problem thinking everybody knows what I know. So when I talk, I automatically think they know what I'm talking about, but I catch myself sometimes.
It's easy to do that. I hate to say it. I think a lot of people, like once we get to a certain level, it's easy to assume that everybody knows what we know or has gone through even the same experiences that we've gone
Right.
through.
And a lot of us do know what we're talking about, but, because that's the other thing. A lot of the company I keep are all, growers that are pretty well veterans at it and know what I'm talking about. But there are, the new ones that I don't realize. Yeah.
And fine company it is to keep.
It's nice to be
Indeed.
amongst a crowd that know what you're talking about, but I definitely think sometimes we do go over people's heads, but I think that's an opportunity for them to learn. And we also do try and dive back, much more so when we had Shane. I will admit that as a
Yeah.
host, being knowledgeable is playing against myself in this regard because I assume, like you were talking about, that other people have a lot of the knowledge that I have, so that I won't take the time to explain or maybe ask a question, even though I know the answer to it. Shane did a great job of that. Sometimes he would know the answer, but he would just ask the question because he saw it so many times in the chat, or he's been asked it himself so many times by other growers and things like that. And even if it was like literally like the most brand new grower question, maybe that's like what a lot of people in the chat are wanting to know, like what is a feminized seed, or what is a photoperiod plant, what is an autoflower, and like those really, really basic things. But sometimes it can get a little bit carried away if we keep on answering the same like 3 to 5 questions over and over. Like that kind of happened on the Breeders Collective. Everybody just asked, what is silver thiosulfate and how do you reverse a plant? Like literally we had like 6 or 7 episodes and that came up every time. And I don't want to be like, go watch episode 1, but like we only had a few episodes. And when you have a small pool of content and people still don't go back through it, you sort of got to assume at some point during the live, certain people are only going to listen right then and there, and maybe giving a little bit more context sometimes is important, and other times it's not necessary. So we'll always try our
That-
best to keep a good balance.
That reminds me of a story someone told that with this new legalization and everything, these regular farmers said, "Hey, we're going to grow hemp," and they didn't realize that they had to turn the lights 12 and 12, something as just like that, and they failed because they didn't realize that. They're like, "Yeah, the plants are huge." When the guy went to the facility, they were all vegging into the lights almost already and stuff. So, yeah, knowledge is important. And let me say, like, I try to find people that know more than me so I can learn from them. But at the same token, someone that's new could either remind you or actually have a tidbit of information that is very beneficial that you wouldn't have gotten, a different way. So it's good to listen to everyone and try and learn whatever you can from anybody.
Yeah, Rasta Jeff always says maybe they read a book that you didn't, and they picked up one line from that might change the way that you grow entirely, or like enlighten you to something that you'd never even heard of before. And it could be a brand new grower, or more often than not, which is the case for me, I have a question from a new grower that makes me think about it in a different way. Maybe I've never been asked that question before. Maybe it's because they have such fresh eyes and they're so new to the industry. They're like, why the fuck does everybody do things this way? Sometimes it's just like, yeah, that's kind of how our culture is. But sometimes it's like, well, maybe there is actually a better way. Like you do this in this other industry and it works really well for you guys. So like maybe we should try and adopt that over here. So there's a lot of room for improvement still in the cannabis industry. We're still, I think, in the very infancy, despite it being around for thousands of years. We're just coming into the era of actual legalization, which is happening slowly. And it's looking more like regulation or heavily regulated legalization, where they're excluding a lot of people from participating, which I think a lot of people are disappointed about. But with that being said, I talked a little bit, and this is the last note I'll say before I let everybody do our sign-offs, with somebody in the chat who uses the real name and is in a red state, so I won't say it. But just about how far cannabis has come in my lifetime. Other than technology, I can't see anything that has physically changed and socially changed so much in my lifetime, from like people, and granted there still are people being locked up over joints, but from that where people would go to jail for like 20, 30 years over like less than a few grams, to now it's being cultivated in acres and in greenhouses legally in many states, and in certain countries like Israel and Canada, it's fully legal and they're doing proper research on it now. And I literally just like, before I graduated high school, if you asked me, is cannabis ever going to get to this point of legalization? I would have said, fuck no. I don't think so. I hope so. I hope it would get to this point at least. And I actually, now that we're here, I think it's going to go further and get even better than I ever could have dreamed of, which is a kind of awesome place, because we are definitely moving in the right direction. And shows like this are just one small part of that. So thank you all on the panel for coming. I want to give Kyle Breeder the first chance to give his sign out.
Thanks, Jack. I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate everyone that's here. I appreciate everything that everyone does. I know we're all kind of taking time out of our personal life to help people, and I admire that in other humans. That's all about, it's all about giving back, man. And it always comes back around. But yeah, if anyone wants to look at any of my social media accounts, it's Predicative Breeding on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. If you're looking for feminized seeds, please feel free to check out my website at pbreeding.com. And if anybody has questions about the website or anything I'm doing, you can reach out to me on Instagram at any time. I'm pretty open, conversative on there. And yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks everyone here. And I hope to see you guys next Sunday. Everybody be well.
Have a great one, Kyle. And if you want to hear more from Kyle, he did a episode of Talking Buds recently where he got to talk a little more at length. I know he tends to be quiet on our panel here, but he's full of great knowledge and information, and he gives a little bit more detail about his company and what he went through to make those seeds that he's talking about on his website available. So check out pbreeding.com, and also make sure to check out Talking Buds, the episode with Kyle. I believe Dr. MJ has also done an episode about lighting that was pretty good. But shout out to Dr. MJ. He left us 1 hour in. Next up, Noah the Grower.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks, everybody. I've been recovering from a little surgery here and haven't been able to be on for a couple of weeks, but this is a really fun episode. I love hanging out with everybody, Spartan, Jack, everyone, and I just love hanging out with everybody. Had a great time and can't wait to do it again. Everybody, happy growing.
Thank you so much for joining us, Noah. And again, wishing you a speedy and full recovery. I know it's never easy with those larger, intense surgeries, and the photos looked like it was kind of a rough first few days, but I know you're moving in the right direction and getting closer to being on the right foot, literally, here soon. So next up, the American one.
Hey, Jack, great hosting tonight. And I really loved all the discussion. And it's awesome to have Zentanol here with us to pick his brain and get his take on everything, as well as Dr. Coco, as well as you, as well as Kyle Breeder and Noah. So I'm thankful for all you guys, and thankful for chat. And yeah, we'll see you all next week.
Thank you again for joining us, the American One. I look forward to your little package that's coming in the mail. I'm glad that mine made it safely to you. And it'll be fun to exchange growing out some of each other's genetics. I think that's something more people in the community should definitely look into doing.
Yes, I'm excited.
So last and definitely not least, our IPM specialist, as I called him out at the top of the hour, Matthew Gates.
Really enjoyed the session today. I appreciate everyone's interest, or those who had interest in the music that I was talking about. I appreciate you bringing that up, Spartan. If you want to find not my music, but my integrated pest management information, there are two main places. The first one is YouTube channel Zentanol, which is the same channel I was commenting in the chat with. You can also find a lot of my information that I put out on Instagram at Sync Angel. And thanks a lot, everyone. I really appreciate it. That's why I like to come here. I learn a lot too, and I'm able to help people out. And that's the sort of main impetus for my work. So it's really great to be able to create sort of a community feel and sort of a collaborative essence between the chat and the panel and all of our combined work in the industry.
It is a great feeling to be a part of this, to be honest. I'm thankful for all of you guys because without you, I wouldn't have been able to accomplish, I think, what is one of my greater accomplishments. I just sort of shared with one of the guys in the DMs I was talking with. It's I went through my DMs and counted, and I've actually officially helped over 1,000 growers at this point. Like there's like 10 per page, and I scrolled, 100 times. And of those people, only X amount were people that like were friends or whatever that weren't asking for advice. And seeing so many people that have asked me for advice or I've seen their garden struggling, and then a week or days later, they're like, hey, I tried what you suggested and it helped, is really gratifying to see that over and over and over continually. I just stopped counting after 1,000. I was like, holy shit, this is way more than I ever would have thought. So to be able to use this show as a platform to do that on an even larger scale, but also to use my connections, because I did say Matthew's our IPM specialist, but I feel like I'm sort of becoming more of one every week because I learned so much from him that like now in the chats, I'm actually identifying some of the pests. Like if he's busy, I might get there before him and do it accurately sometimes, which is like a big accomplishment. We can all get better at something, and we can all help others in some way, whether you think you can or not. I think people are a lot more capable than they're aware of. You just got to believe in yourself and try your best to find good information. And I think that everybody who's here is already sort of on that right path and doing that. I think that we have a great panel of knowledgeable people who put a lot of time and effort into making sure what they say has some water behind it. And I'm really thankful for all you guys. So I don't want to run over too long. I know the Michigan Bros Grow Show, another great show in this community, is starting up there live right now. That's where Spartan Grown is over at. Shout out to Spartan Grown again. But I want to say thank you to everyone in the chat who showed up live, and thank you to everyone who listens afterwards on the podcast. This has been a production of the Cheap Home Grow podcast. I am at Jack Greenstock, as you might be able to see behind me if my green screen works out. And you can find me at Jack_Greenstock on Twitter. I'm also on the cannabis-friendly social media, Cannabuzz. And I do have an episode of Greenstock Talks that I didn't plan to release any until my book came out, but I got so fired up about Blue Dream, people not knowing its lineage, people misunderstanding what it should be used for, in my opinion, that I just had to record an episode. And it's still in the process of being edited and everything. But yeah, you can all look forward to that coming out in the somewhat near future. And thanks again. This is Jack Greenstock signing off. See you next week.
With love.